Hello everyone, Raymond here again, and welcome back to the next installment of the Project Feline Devlog series, a series about developing my own game in my own way from start to finish. I want to start this video by thanking each and every one of you that contributed to the last video. This can be with likes, comments, feedback. It's all been really helpful in helping me create a better game, and I want to thank each and every one of you that has taken the time to give me some feedback on this project. One comment in particular I wanted to highlight that spoke really close to my heart was by Jay Games on my last episode, who says that he wanted to get into game development and already had multiple pretty fleshed out, complicated ideas that he was inspired about, but not at the skill level that they required. So he tried making simple games, but was never motivated to finish them, and they never inspired him the same way that larger projects did. But then, upon finding my devlog, reminded me that mid-grounds do exist and that you can make a game that has an interesting setting. And I couldn't have said it better myself. I felt the exact same way trying to develop projects before this game. I had a lot of my fellow game dev friends tell me to try and shoot for smaller projects, such as mobile games, and that's just something I've never really been interested in myself. I tried a few small prototypes here and there of mobile games I could develop to up my skills, but as J Games so well put, it was just not motivating enough compared to the larger projects I had in mind. So it made me really happy to know that this could act as a reminder to those wanting to get into game development that you can make some compromises while still delivering on what you want to deliver on. And that's solely one of the core reasons I get so satisfied out of making this game and working on it. So thank you for that comment. In this episode, I want to talk about what I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. What I've managed to implement in the next version is creating a basic version of the protagonist character in the game, improving the wall ride mechanic based on your feedback, and adding two new mechanics, shooting and the energy mechanic. With creating the character, I usually like to start a 3D model with some kind of reference in mind. A lot of professionals do this, where they'll usually have the character drawn in a T-pose or A-pose shape. So with the help of a handy tool called Design Doll, which a lot of illustrators use, I crafted a simple A-pose shaped character with roughly the proportions of the character I wanted. And then I used that to draw up the details of the character and the hair and the armor. Once creating those projection sheets, I then put them into Blender and began modeling the character with them. So I understand the model isn't fully detailed or high poly, it probably looks like something from the PS2 era, and that's just because for the moment I just want a bare bones representation of what the character could look like for the final game. Once having the model completed, I then exported the UV data out into Photoshop and just colored over them with some basic bare bones colors to act as a texture. What I then did afterwards was take the character into a tool called Mixamo, which is an order rigging and animating tool. Because it's a quick and easy tool, I was able to get the character moving with some nice animations in a very short amount of time. I then took these animations into the engine using the default mannequin animation blueprint as a template and just switched out the animations in accordance with the character's mechanics, and I managed to get a working textured animated character into the game. One of the reasons I went for a very low budget and low poly look is because I think it's going to be one of the most important things of this game, and a really important part of the experience as a whole. So I wanted to have some sort of early iteration that was a bit more representative of the final game rather than the default mannequin. So with the development of this particular iteration of the character, a lot of shortcuts were taken to save on time. For the final character, I'd like to spend a bit more time and care with it and perhaps manually do the animations, as animation is something I'm really passionate about. The next topic I want to talk about is the wall ride and what's been changed. Thanks to the feedback I've gotten from my previous videos, I've managed to make some changes to it to improve the functionality. One of the major things I've changed is instead of using a line trace to detect for walls, I am now using a capsule trace to detect for walls. Because of the nature of a capsule trace, the character can now detect walls from all sides. Meaning, you can run at a wall, hold down the wall jump button, and start running according to what side you're more skewed towards. And after playing around with it, I think it does feel a lot more natural and easier to grasp. And I think for the core experience of the game, the core mechanic has to be fun and feel good to control. So I think if I had a really clunky wall ride, it would greatly impact the quality of the game and how long people would want to spend playing it. So I made sure that this was one of the top priorities for this week, and continuing throughout the project depending on the feedback I get. I always want to place the core mechanics at the utmost priority because again, it is imperative to the experience of the game, and the experience has to feel good to control. I've also made some changes to the settings of the character and the momentum and speed. I've tried to make the character feel a bit more weighty, so I've changed up things like the gravity and mass, and hopefully we get a more natural result because of this. Another thing I've managed to improve is the camera and how it angles itself. With my old build, I was simply using just a timeline node to animate the camera going left and right. This, however, would expose a bug if you tried going from a wall to the left side of your character quickly to the right side of your character, where the camera would just snap to the other side. This now doesn't happen, as it's now using a lerp system to smoothly interpolate the camera between its desired points. It also will slightly rotate the camera and expand the field of view while wall riding, allowing you to see more as you ride. The next thing I want to bring up is two new mechanics I've implemented, the first of which being shooting. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I was sort of aiming for a third-person shooter kind of game, so I've now implemented a basic shooting mechanic. There's no real visible cues yet, but I have added a sound effect every time you press fire. Holding down the fire button will trigger an auto-fire mode, and you can use this auto-fire to shoot certain things. If the object you shoot is physics enabled, it will indeed send an impulse force to it, knocking it backwards. It also subtracts an amount of health, and depending on what objects have health, it can destroy objects after a certain amount of hits. The way I've got shooting to work so far is just with a basic hit scan technique going from the middle of the camera. I have also tried experimenting with a projectile-based system, but that still had a couple of bugs, and I thought to just leave it on the shelf for the moment. The other interesting mechanic I want to bring to attention is the energy system. Both wall riding and shooting rely on this system, and as you could probably tell for the Crysis players, it was definitely inspired by the Crysis games. So how this energy works is that shooting your gun will cost you energy, but wall riding will replenish it. An also thing to note as well is that if you dismount jump off a wall, which is where you press the jump button just as you let go of a wall to get that little boost of momentum, it'll also give you a boost of energy. So one of the reasons I implemented this was to create what a lot of designers refer to as a gameplay loop. A loop usually works something like this. Take soccer for example. You start the game, you kick a ball, and you score. And then it loops. Usually loops involve what the player does with the core mechanic of the game. One of the problems, however, with creating a game such as this, where you've got the ability to move and to ride on walls and to shoot, is that it doesn't really give you any reason to ride on walls. And I kind of noticed this with a few similar games I've played that implement wall riding. Titanfall, for example. While it does feel really fun to ride on walls, I didn't necessarily feel that the game required you, in all cases, to ride on walls. For a first-person shooter at least. There were some platforming segments of the game that did require this mechanic, but I think for the shooting dynamic, it wasn't as fundamental of a piece. So one thing I wanted to tackle with combining these two mechanics together was giving the player a reason to ride on walls rather than to just stay on the ground and shoot things. And one of the solutions I came up with was the energy system, where shooting will cost energy and wall riding will replenish it. Whether or not this is a good solution or a bad solution, time will tell, and so will your help. In fact, just like last week, I've got a new version of the build in the description of this video where you can test it out for yourself and see what you think. I'm open and welcome to other alternatives and ideas. There's a few I'm actually experimenting with myself that are in the works, but for the moment, this is what I've managed to develop, and I'm hoping that it creates a nice harmony between shooting and wall riding. So again, new build is available in the description of the video. I know it's also been a little while since my last episode of this devlog series, so if you want to see more frequent updates on the game, I will be posting screenshots and GIFs on my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, which I'll link in the description below. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the game, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.